Wasserstrom. I'm just pausing for one moment. June, it appears to me that I have everyone present. Do you believe? I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. The regular meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors of August 26, 2020 is called to order. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca?
Present.
Ms. Cortez?
Here.
Mr. Hogan?
Here.
Dr. Jones?
Present.
Ms. Manser?
Here.
Mr. Wasserstrom? Ms. Wolfsey? I see you, Mr. Wasserstrom.
Here, June.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this evening. So I want to first see if there are any proposed changes to the agenda as presented. Okay, hearing none, it would now be in order to receive a motion for acceptance of the agenda.
So
Ms.
moved.
Okay, Ms. Wolfsey, a second?
Second. Can you hear me? Second.
Got it. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom? Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda for this evening is public comment. We have 4 individuals who've indicated they wish to address the board this evening. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And we will call to you in order. The first individual is Chris Jewell from Elevate KC. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hi. Yes, my name's Chris Jaley, and I am the Executive Director of Elevate Metro KC. And I wanted to introduce you to our mentoring partnership with Southeast High School and Banneker Elementary. During school time hours, we teach accredited classes where Southeast High School students learn 13 essential character and life skills. And then these same students also learn how to mentor students at Banneker Elementary and then practice doing so on a weekly basis. After school, our staff mentor these same students, equipping them to navigate life as a teen and to prepare them to thrive as adults. Elevate is a national program that's existed for over 35 years and just started within KCPS-TV within the last year. Our local and national outcomes indicate Elevate students perform better academically, socially, and emotionally as a result of the teaching and mentoring that they received. For example, during the pandemic-caused shutdown this spring, our students displayed an 85% participation rate in their classes. And to give you more of an inside look into what the program looks like as we partner with Southeast High and Banneker, we've got a short video to show you.
Are we facilitating? All right, good.
It's my turn.
The question is, why Elevate? My question is, why not Elevate? Elevate is a place where we think it, process it, and confess it, because everyone matters in our eyes.
My experience with Elevate has been, it teaches me how to be a leader, through core values, life skills, all that. It's something that's really gonna help me outside of school. Like, being a leader, I'm gonna take that to every step of my life.
You can use Elevate to build character development, build life skills, and also better yourself as a person and find that direction in your life that you are kind of looking for starting out.
1, 2, 3, go. I am somebody, and I won't stop like nobody. I got my fist in the air and the rhythm in my feet. I got love for my people and a chance for me.
Mentoring is essential for every child throughout K-12 education. In Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City Public Schools, mentoring is an initiative that we like to focus on at every building level, assigning all students to mentors. We do that through various programs such as Elevate KC, where we have high school mentors come into elementary school buildings to help advocate for students and at the same time provide them with life skills to help them be successful later on in life.
My name is Chris Jaley. I'm the director here at Elevate Metro KC. And one of the things that I love about this program is being here in this building every Thursday to watch our high school students in the Elevate class mentor 4th and 5th grade students. I also know the personal stories of those high school students, and every single one is a hero with what they're having to battle with in their own personal life. And what I love about Elevate is that we walk alongside them in a trusting adult relationship and give them the support that they need, not just to survive, but also to thrive.
Being able to do 50% in class and 50% outside of class, that's been a true blessing because it allows you to go deeper with the kids. It allows you to have more conversations that you could not have inside of the classroom just because of time and trying to facilitate and work with everyone.
Why Elevate? For me, I think the easiest way for me to articulate that is by using one of our journal entries, and it's the 3H, so it's your head, heart, and hands. And for me, it connects all three. So the head is the intellectual piece. I love to teach. I just love being with the students. So that helps me out there. But that heart, my heart thrives around kids and being able to get to know them. So the mentoring piece connects it. And then the hands is the application. We get to live life with them. So I'm able to teach, live life, and mentor kids. So it wraps everything up that I like to work with.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. I believe the next individual is also with your organization, and I think that is probably Ms. Tiffany Green. And Ms. Green, if it's all right, I'm going to go ahead and give, since the initial piece took a little bit longer, I'm going to take a little bit of time off of your 3 minutes, if I can do that, just so I'm fair with everyone.
Yes, Miss Patty. It actually will be really quick. I just wanted to give a true testament of some of the things that we have worked with. So we had a recent graduate from Southeast High School who, when she graduated, didn't know what she wanted to do, didn't know what college she wanted to attend or anything like that. But she spoke to me shortly after graduation and said, because of our class and because of her participation with Banneker, she is now she's going to start at Penn Valley, but wants to go into child growth and development and has applied to be a teacher assistant at Operation Breakthrough, where before she had no idea that this is what she wanted to do. And she actually was one of the ones who did not want to go over to mentor the kids. She was so afraid, but she said giving her that opportunity is let her know that she's capable and she is able to handle a job of that stature. So it just shows our true testament with this being our first year. We only had 6 months with these students, and to already have change in relationships that go so deep that it's changed some of their lives. It shows true to what Elevate is truly about. That is it.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate that. The next person on the agenda this evening is Mr. Tom Love, who's going to speak to us about early childhood funding. Mr. Love, are you with us tonight?
He had the wrong phone number. I just gave him the new code. He should be on the line shortly. Let's go on to Mr. Steiner and then put Mr. Love.
All right. So Mr. Steiner, welcome. If you are there with us, can you let me know if you are here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful. You will also have 3 minutes, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Excellent. I attended your executive meeting earlier. It was good to hear. You guys know what you're talking about, and I appreciate that. I wanted to speak with you today to first address the school's reopening criteria and then to make a case for opening on a limited basis public schools. The KCPS webpage lists the reopening criteria being in-person classes will start for students only after the number of COVID cases in our community decreases for 14 days in a row. Sorry to tell you that the case numbers are spiking in this case, and there's never been a period of 14 consecutive days of movement. There have been big drops and slight increases off of those drops. Attached to my meeting request was a spreadsheet that shows the Kansas City COVID cases compiled by the Kansas City Star for Kansas City and the 6 neighboring counties. And you can see that the spreadsheet shows every consecutive day of movement up or down, which the if statement for that was pretty cool, but I won't go into it. I also ran the numbers for the country of Italy, which has gone through the pandemic. It's the worst hit per capita country in the world by COVID. It has also never had a period of 14 consecutive days of decreasing cases. I'm mostly talking here about existing issues instead of proposing solutions, but the engineer in me gets the better of me here. I know you're not asking me to, but a better metric would be picking a number of active new daily cases that is an acceptable risk and measuring that against the current daily active new cases minus nursing home and prison cases. The second topic of this letter is to make a case for the opening of schools. First, KCPS is not the first school system in Kansas City to attempt this. The following schools, as I'm sure you guys already know, are already open for some form of on-premise schooling in the Kansas City area. Pembroke Hill, Notre Dame de Sion, the Barlow School, Rockhurst, St. Teresa's, Summit Christian Academy, St. Thomas Aquinas, Horizon Academy, and many others. I will now go into the reasons that KCPS should open, starting with the health of the children. Focusing directly on children 0 to 17, the number of hospitalizations for that age range in the US is 524. That gives a probability of 1 in 75,896 children will be hospitalized. So it is likely that 0 children in KCPS will be hospitalized. That's an 80% probability given those numbers. As to fatalities, there hasn't been a single fatality for anyone 0 to 19 in the state of Missouri, according to the Missouri Department of Health. All of my sources are listed in the meeting request. I'm going to skip the children spreading of it and the how can we protect the staff. That's included again in the request. This is not to say that outbreaks will not occur. Currently, colleges and school districts that have resumed operations are finding that students do bring COVID into the school. There isn't anything magical that will stop all COVID cases from existing in the confines of the school building. But very few of those cases have been transmitted at the school itself, and most come from community transmission. The last point I wish to bring up is closing schools to avoid COVID risk is not without harm to students. Distance education for primary and secondary schools isn't a good replacement for children, nor are academics. Also, academics are negatively impacted and socialization is not equivalent in online classes. I won't go into this as you, the members of the board, are the experts in it. I will put forth the following statistics as it relates to the
Mr. Steiner, I apologize that your time period is up, but you did provide information to the board in the email communication, and we can all look at that information and appreciate you coming this evening to share your perspective with us on.
None of this is my perspective. I want to clarify. All of this is data that's listed. I would also ask the board for 1 more minute to finish
I'm sorry, Mr. Steiner. We try to stick with we're trying to be consistent with everyone so that we can just, so that in fairness to everybody, we keep that time to 3 minutes, and everyone on the board has received that communication and has all of that material. So we're very glad you came, and you are welcome to come back at a future meeting as well, and also welcome to reach out to the board. Additionally, individually, as many people in the community do.
I have attempted so. So can I ask, are you going to change the reopening criteria?
We don't respond in public comment. We receive the information and we receive those comments, but it's not a response component of our agenda. but we do have it. We do take everything that's been brought to us into consideration and advisement. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. I now want to come back and see if Mr. Tom Love has joined this. He was also on the list to speak this evening. Mr. Love? Not hearing anything, and I don't see anything from our board secretary, so I am going to assume that Mr.
Hello?
Yes, hi, Mr. Love. Are you ready to begin?
I feel special. I hit the *6 and I got through.
Awesome. We're ready for you.
Okay, so I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the board again this evening, and I'm hoping everyone is well, and that that you make a wise decision on reopening the schools if that's what you come to. And again, I am trying to follow what Dr. Bedell had asked me to do about 3 months ago, and that was try to come up with some more money for the district. And I had mentioned 2 months ago that there's an early childhood program available for the school district between ages 3 and 5, and that are free and reduced lunch students. I think 90% of our children fall into that category, and we're able to use the average daily attendance formula for that. So if Dr. Shepard would take a look at it, or Dr. Bedell, or members of the board, it's section 163.018.1. It became I think we may be, I'm not sure, but we may be using some Title I funds for early childhood, but it's not necessary. We have the funding from the state, so these students could potentially go, as I understand it, to a full day of pre-K. And that would take care of the issue of these 4-year-olds that were starting in kindergarten. If the kindergarten teachers could screen them and identify if they're not actually ready to begin, then they could go into the pre-K program and be funded by the state. The other thing is we could ideally do what happened with my grandson, and that was he was able to, because he's a summer birthday boy and he was born premature, he was able to stay in pre-K an additional year. But this is funded for the state, and it would, if the kindergarten teachers would look at the Missouri state standards, they could identify who's ready and who's not, and we could close the gap in kindergarten. Several years ago, this school district identified that 40% of the students entering kindergarten were 11 months behind. That's a huge gap. And a lot of it has to do with their age, because we were starting 1/6 of the students a year before it's even legal in the state of Missouri. And we have not been complying with that law. And that's important that we comply with the laws in Missouri, because the students are not actually completing kindergarten. They're just attending, a lot of them, and they're not ready, and the kindergarten teachers know it. All you got to do is ask them. The other particular law I'd like to bring to the board's attention and to Dr. Bedell and Dr. Shepard is a Read to Be Ready program that's funded for students in K through 3rd who could do an after-school reading program. They could tie in ideally with the Senate Bill 319 students and get average daily attendance for additional reading help in K through 3rd grade. So there's really, if we close this gap in kindergarten, provide the literacy labs, and we need to have a literacy teacher in every elementary school in Title I. The funding is there. There's millions of dollars, and we could have a reading specialist and para in every elementary school with the current Title I funds if they're used correctly, and that's the proper way to use them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Love.
Appreciate it.
You're joining us this evening. Thank you very much. That concludes the public comment section. The next item on the agenda this evening is the District Advisory Council report. For this report, Mr. DeMonte Rochester of the District Advisory Council, I believe, is with us tonight. Mr. Rochester, are you with us? I am not hearing him, and I'm going to call him.
I am here, Madam Chair.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Rochester.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. Bedell, members of the board. cabinet and community. This is the DAC report for this month. The DAC will partner with the district on equity and enrollment. We also are involved with the KC TIF Watch and have been meeting with Councilwoman Robertson to give input on TIF reform in Kansas City. Last week, DAC had an annual summer retreat where we talked about our bylaws, general meetings, and new officers, as well as creation of our new newsletter. Our first virtual general meeting will be held on September the 16th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. The theme will be called Back to School Night and Communication. Our agenda is going to be Dr. Adele giving opening remarks. Urban League will talk about what they do in their program. Dr. Woodley will talk about trauma in schools. And also we will have breakout rooms. And we invite the board to join us on September the 16th to join us on our first virtual journal meeting. This is my report for this month. Thank you, board, for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rochester. We appreciate the District Advisory Committee participating in our monthly board meetings. At this time, we'll turn to the Board of Directors report for the presentation of the Revenue Expenditure Report. The chair recognizes Treasurer Manny Abarca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Give me 1 second here as I pull up some notes here. So I believe, is Ms. Quinley here? She said she might be able to make it, but if not, I think Joe's got my slides set.
I am here, but Joe is running the slides for you.
Woohoo! All right, so wanted to start off on page 2 here. Note on the first line beginning FB July 1st. Is an estimate as we are accrual, and we will be closing out year end through the next few weeks. In the far right box, the total of all funds indicate we are in the same position in reserves as we were a year ago, although capital projects fund balance is less and operating is more. So just kind of giving you some comparisons here. Moving on to the next slide. So you'll see a lot of blanks right here, which is why Ms. Quinley and her team planned so far in advance to make sure that we have a healthy fund balance moving into the beginning of the year, because you'll see we don't have a lot of revenues coming in at this specific point. So this is common every year, so this is not something to worry about. Neither is the next slide, which will show very similar circumstances here. So, sorry, Joe, I think I might have went one too quick here. Can we go back one? So you'll see here on this slide that we have the $350,000 for local funding received in the month of July. This is the only amount that we have received, and we will receive the rest of these as we move throughout the fiscal year. So moving on to the next slide, again, just showing that some of the local revenues are coming in, but overall you'll see that increase as we continue through the fiscal year. Moving on to the next slide, you'll see that the pattern continues. Little to no revenue in July. One of the primary reasons that we need to, again, begin the year with a strong fund balance. So move to the next one, and I think you should see, this will be the last time that you see a bunch of blanks. Again, the money will come in as expected, so no worries here. Moving on to the next slide. Many lines, but little expenditures as of July can be a light month. So the biggest item here is going to be on the 9th page, which we'll flip through and give you all an opportunity to see the next page, page 8, before we move on to the description for 9. And then I think we'll go ahead and move forward, Joe. So moving on to our 9th page here, you'll see an annual invoice for property and liability insurance. I think this will be the next slide as well, Joe. Yep, right here. Okay, so you'll see that that was paid last year. They were paid in August. Another line of note would be the supplies on page 10. Moving to the next slide, Joe. This year that is up due to the COVID response. So we're buying a lot of PPE, cleaning supplies, and other materials in response to the COVID necessities. So moving on to our investments page. You'll see, I think we've got one more.
One more, Joe.
One more, Joe. There we go. Thank you. Most investments are U.S. Treasuries and mature on pay dates in order to support the large line items of expenses. This is why, again, Ms. Quinley and her team plan so far in advance to make sure that we have the cash flow here to sustain us as our revenues will come future into the fiscal year. So moving on to the next one, you'll see kind of the balance there of those investments. Moving on, one more. So this is a special report on children nutrition services as requested last month. You read this current year in column, or you'll read this current year in column 1 to the 2 prior years ending actuals. CNS has a healthy fund balance, just over $3.5 million to start the year. As a reminder, CNS is expected to cover their own costs annually with revenues received. This includes capital purchases as needed. 2019-20 compared to 2018-2019, revenues are down compared to the prior year by roughly $2 million, mostly due to the federal reimbursement dollars. Meals served post-COVID breaks were down, so meal reimbursements were down as well. Expenditures are down as well, mostly in materials and supplies as products purchasing decreased when feeding decreased. Salaries and benefits continued through year end for all staff. Revenue over under expenditures. When comparing the revenue over expenditures in 2018 to 19, 615,250 to 2019-2020, 381,000. We have a $1 million swing in net profit loss for the program between the 2 years. This is due to the fact that revenues halted in the spring. However, expenditures continued throughout the school year. So with that, that should be my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much.
Please fill in, by the way, if I missed things.
I wanted to see if there are any questions from my colleagues on this report. Hearing none, but I'm pausing just a moment. I know it can take a minute. All right, with that, we appreciate this report. It's important for the community to understand we received this information and have early notification of this information that we are happy to have reviewed with us and with the community at these meetings. So thank you so much to my colleague, Mr. Abarca, for that presentation. With this, I believe now we will we will go to ad hoc committee reports. So I would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Wolfsey. I believe she has an update to provide.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Government Relations Committee met last week on August 18th, and we're going to begin the process by which we set our 2020, but really legislative 2021 priorities. And we began mapping that out. And just so that the public knows what that timing looks like, we present to the board to be voted on our legislative priorities at the November 18th meeting. But in order to do that, there's a little bit of pre-work that takes place. So what I have asked my board colleagues, we'll take last year's legislative priorities. We'll use them as a jumping off point, but I have asked the board to please send to me their thoughts on those and any new things, either things they feel like we want to add maybe or take away. And then we work as a committee. Government Relations is made up of both board members as well as district administrators and some folks from the community. The DAC is there as well. And we will work those and bring them forth to the board over the next several meetings. So I've asked them to have that to me by September 15th is when we'll start putting those together. And just also give folks some other dates. We will be looking at maybe doing a virtual legislative breakfast. We've done a physical one in the past. That's usually at the beginning of December. December 1st also happens to be the date that pre-filing of legislation takes place. And then the first day of session is actually January 6th. And so that is my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And we also are scheduled to bring the KCPS lobbyists to an upcoming board meeting, I believe.
Yes, we'll, because I think he'll also be able, not just him, they will be able to provide some insight into, what this next session will hold for us. And after the November elections, but this will be before that, there'll be even more information related to leadership roles and some insights there. So I imagine we'll actually have them maybe a couple of times before the session begins.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jones, do you have anything that you would like to update the community on?
Just only to say, Madam Chair, that we are discussing with Dr. Bedell's team some of the things that they are already putting into place to serve as a sounding board for families that are in any type of distress during the virtual learning process. So we just want to remind the community that there are still opportunities for them to voice their concerns or their cries for help, for lack of a better phrase, during this time. And so we discussed that, and we also talked about methods for being engaged with the community. So still showing up at neighborhood meetings and different community meetings, even in this virtual space that we find ourselves in.
Dr. Jones, if community members want to invite us to their virtual meetings, they can go ahead and reach out to us, correct, through our board secretary to let us know, and we would be able to participate.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you. The next items of business are the report of the superintendent. The chair recognizes Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a couple of items under the superintendent's report that are, in my opinion, of great importance to our community, and just providing updates as we prepare to open up school. The first item that we have at this point is a program called KC Homeroom, our KCPS Homeroom TV show, and we've already started airing editions of it. We wanted to, in our video highlight, just give you all an update on what it's looking like and what the viewers are seeing in terms of the products that the district is putting out. So if we can get the screen over to it, and let's run it.
Have you ever wondered why numbers are different sizes?
Hey, bonjour les élèves, ça va? Monsieur Vinemont ici. Je vais vous expliquer aujourd'hui comment préparer un podcast.
These two are in constant struggle between each other, in that if one goes up, the other one goes down, and vice versa. So let's talk about PH.
We're going to talk about problem solving. Let me tell you a little secret. I did not always like math. When I was a kid, math scared me. I thought it was too hard and I didn't think I could do it. And it was not my favorite subject in school until I realized that math is all over the place.
My daughters were born in Okinawa, Japan. And they have a different way of introducing themselves than kissing one another on the cheek. They bow.
Some of the things that character does, says, thinks, and feels, and how it impacts our story next week. We'll also be practicing a different reading strategy that you can apply to any book.
I have the solar beads in my hand. What I'm going to do is drop these on the ground. You can see that red one automatically changed colors.
now we have x by itself, and all we need to do is divide over here.
Today we talked about asking questions. I think the next time we meet, we'll start talking about how to answer those questions. It was great being with you today, and happy reading.
America basically had to decide, are these new states going to be free, or are they going to be slave states? A lot of people want the states to choose.
And your elbow go to your knee, but you kind of meet it halfway. And you want to crunch on the side. You should feel it kind of crunch. So we just do a side crunch.
There's so much good information that we need to learn and digest about our world. And really, it's sometimes even more interesting what really happens than the things that are entirely made up or make-believe.
We can see some changes happening with our marshmallows. I'm gonna peel back the plastic a little bit. We can poke at it. Woo! See that? Our marshmallow is getting really gooey.
5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Reach and squat. 2, 3, 4.
Trombone is a member of the low brass family, but it can play pretty low. And it can also play pretty high.
Did you know that you can take any ordinary walk and turn it into a math walk just by stopping along the way and talking about the things that you see around you that have to do with math? Okay, scientists, this is Bella. Bella is a Bernedoodle.
Doesn't matter if they're confirmed or denied, it just helps us to get ready to think about it. So are you guys ready to make some predictions? Okay, so we'll go ahead and start reading again from the Watsons Go to Birmingham.
Our hydrochloric acid. And those properties tend to align with bases. This is like a 13-14. So if we're looking at 13-14, we're up here.
Does anyone remember what we talked about last week? Characters' actions. Remember, what does a character do, say, think, and feel?
Madam Chair, this is probably something that I'm just very excited about, us being able to produce this and to be able to provide this content, not only for our students, but anybody that decides that they want to tune in at 10 o'clock Monday through Friday. I know later on in my presentation, we will provide you all with a couple of slides on some of the Educational Access Channel work that we've been doing. So, but we wanted to highlight those are things that are already done and have already been aired, and go a little bit further into that with about 4 slides of some updates to provide to the community. So I don't know if you at this point want to, if there are any questions, or you want to wait until we get to that part a little later.
Well, I think given that we just took a look at, this new TV program, and it's 5 days a week, right? 5 days every morning, 9 to 10 o'clock at this time, correct? Is it we doing 9 to 10 a.m.?
It's actually 8 o'clock, 8 to 9.
8 to 9. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, it's very fun. I have watched a couple mornings. I'm wondering if I keep watching Dr. Bedell, if I'll be able to play the trombone before Christmas. I don't know, but thank you so much.
It airs on channel 38. So 38. I think it's the spot.
38 the spot. Mm-hmm.
I know, I'm sorry, hotspot. All this technology stuff in my mind right now. Okay.
Are there any questions or comments about this new programming from Jennifer Wolfsey?
So I'm smiling because in prep for this, I went and watched and I watched full on the whole episode. I wanted to see different subjects, different ages, and then I wanted to see how it tracked week to week. And I will just say, at first, when this concept was brought forth, I was like, how in the world is this going to work? I love them. And one of the things, so I finally figured out how the timing of it goes. So if I'm that age, like I'm going to have my daughter listen to the middle school one. But subjects, I think my only suggestion would be I was having a hard time like finding the subject in written out form. So like if I'm a parent looking to try to find that video, that might be very helpful if I could search and find that. So maybe I just didn't know how to look for it, but I love it. Kudos to everybody involved with who thought of it, who put it together. And I'm not watching it on TV, I'm watching on YouTube. So for those of us that, you know.
Yeah, because all of them are archived, Ms. Waitu, so folks they have opportunities to go just to the ones that are relevant for them. I think that's a great suggestion and Ms. Waitu, you may have already have a system on how people can go and retrieve the ones that are grade appropriate. So I don't know.
Yeah, we can talk about that in our presentation portion down in the slides that we have. We have some of the information in there for you about content and timeframes for those. So we'll do that when we get to that section of the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Bedell, we're back to you then.
All right, the second item on the agenda is a presentation from House Representative Ingrid Burnett. She has a resolution that she wants to present to our board of directors and to the community. As many of you may be aware, she's a Democrat that represents the Northeast area of Kansas City, parts of Sugar Creek, Independence, and Jackson County, District 19 in the Missouri House of Representatives. She was elected to her first 2-year term in November. She has experience as an educator, experience as a board of director, formerly a board of director in the Kansas City Public School District. And we know that we've worked with Representative Burnett on a number of issues in Jefferson City over the past several years. Welcome. And at this point, we want to give the floor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. It's such an honor to be here. I have some prepared remarks that I'm going to make. The actual resolution that I am presenting has already been delivered, and there it is. Good. Thank you, Patty, for showing that off. So tonight I have the honor of presenting a resolution from the Missouri House that recognizes the good works of the Kansas City Public School System that you all are responsible for implementing. And I hope you all heard what I just said, because it has been my experience over the years that the Missouri House typically has more interest in pointing out your flaws and nitpicking your successes. But tonight, you are being recognized by the members of the Missouri House of Representatives with pride. I know this because it says so in the first line, whereas the members of the Missouri House of Representatives proudly pause to recognize the Kansas City Public Schools in Kansas City, Missouri, which is to be commended for its efforts. I believe that when people and agencies go above and beyond the call of duty, and I know that there are teachers and staff and administrators and bus drivers who do this every day, I believe that it's important to stop for a moment and say thank you. So I carry this message from the Missouri House to say thank you. And rather than read it as whereases, I'm going to read them as thank you. Thank you for providing more than 314,000 meals and counting to students. Thank you for assuring that individual lesson plans and resource materials were delivered via mail and virtually. Thank you for helping to bridge the digital divide with Wi-Fi hotspots and laptops to Kansas City Public School District families. Thank you for continuing to support students' socio-emotional well-being. Thank you for promoting the safety of all KCPS employees by providing masks and hygiene resources in buildings, as well as doing the regular deep cleanings. Thank you for promoting the health and well-being of KCPS families by assembling and distributing hygiene kits. Thank you for creating safe ways for students and their families to celebrate their accomplishments and graduations. And thank you for maintaining a line of communication with families to keep them informed of additional resources and supports. I am so proud of the work KCPS does to meet the needs of our students. And I hope that by having this in a visible space, that those who happen to see it will pause and take notice and recognize the deep commitment to our children and families that gets expressed here on a daily basis, regardless of the challenges our circumstances may present. Congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you, Representative Burnett, and we definitely appreciate that resolution. Our team has worked extremely hard to try to think outside of the box, to try to be innovative. You just saw that with our educational access content that we're putting up, but we also believe that this is a great opportunity for our school district to really look at doing some sustainable redesigning of policies that are on the books, redesigning the system so that it can better serve the families that we are responsible for serving, and having a great opportunity to dismantle a system, in my opinion, that's been built to keep certain communities shut out of the Kansas City dream. We have an opportunity now to go and forge ahead with the support of this board, and we most certainly hope that as we think about policies at the state level, policies at the federal level, that we'll be able to have a support from you all around things that we believe will allow for our kids to have a fair and equitable opportunity to achieve the American dream. So thank you.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I just want to say I stand ready to assist. Let me know. I'm available. Please let me know. You've got my contact information, and I am happy to help however I can.
Sure.
Thank you, Representative Burnett, for coming this evening. And we'll make sure that everyone, we are all distanced for these meetings these days, but we'll make sure that everyone is able to see this resolution signed by the House Speaker and that you have introduced. So I appreciate you coming here this evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Madam Chair, the next section is opening of schools part 2. We shared with you all that when we went through our part 1 presentations, that we wanted to come back to the board and the community to provide you all an update on social and emotional supports and what we're doing in that area. We wanted to go a little bit deeper into some of the feedback that we're receiving now on our educational access channel that we have with 38 The Spot. And then provide you an update with child nutrition services. We did not provide an update on what food services would look like and how we're going to move forward with ensuring that our families are taken care of as we prepare to open up school. So at this juncture, I will pass it over to Dr. Woodley, who will give us the overview of the social emotional supports.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bedell and board, for this opportunity to share with you about the great things that my team has been able to do in the midst of this pandemic. So wanted to kind of just start off by saying I have an amazing team of individuals leading this work. My lead clinician, Travana Alexander, has been a wonderful asset at really pushing the agenda forward in this area, as well as Dr. Jermaine Wilson, the director of school counselors, and then my head of security, Marcus Major Harris. So just a wonderful group of individuals that have helped me lead this initiative for us to be able to meet the needs of kids during this time. So wanted to kind of give you guys an overview of, basically how we had to pivot in March to really meet the needs of our family. So of course, you guys know we came to school one day and then went on spring break, and then we had to come back with a new way of looking at how do we meet the needs of our kids. So what we began to start out with is wellness checks. So our school counselors, our school teams all came together and they began to contact families and make sure that we were able to reach all of our families and to give them guidance that even though our schools were closed, that we were still available to support them. So as you see on this flyer on the screen, this was a campaign that we ran throughout the city, reaching out to the community to let them know that, hey, even though our buildings are closed, we are still open for business, and our counselors and our clinicians were ready and willing to meet the social and emotional needs of kids. So we reached out to all of our families, and then if the school teams or the counselors were not able to reach families, then they referred them to our clinicians, and we began to do skip tracing kind of, and really trying to identify different mechanisms that we could go about finding our students. When we were unable to use the traditional forms of reaching out to kids and finding them, we implemented no contact wellness checks, where I actually went to the homes of the last addresses for our families to try to reach out to them. This procedure was very successful. We were able to reach about 90% of our families. Although we was not able to reach 100%, we were able to reach a majority of our families through this process. We were able to reach out to our communities, our neighborhood association, all youth-facing youth servicing organization, providing them with our contact information about, please, we're here, we're able to serve you. Please contact us and provide us with your updated information. Next slide, please. So some of the social emotional supports, as a result of us needing to pivot and transitioning, we decided that we needed to kind of develop a hotline system where parents could call in to us. So we developed hotline numbers for each and individual school. So we had individual school flyers that went out into the community, social media, into the newspapers, every mechanism that we could possibly provide to say, hey, KCPS is here to serve you, and provided them with a hotline number to reach us and be able to contact us. Knowing that, when you're speaking to families over the phone, you really can't really look into the eyes of a child and see what are the some issues are the concerns that are presenting. So we identified early on that we really needed to kind of look toward a telehealth model where we're able to provide virtual one-to-one sessions with students and families. So we began to start working with a consultant with Diversity Telehealth to implement our telehealth protocols and looking at best and next practices for implementing telehealth as a part of our programs. We worked closely with our Plaza Communitaria program to really do virtual family support meetings to be able to kind of get parents engaged and let them know that we're able to support them even, with the language barriers. There was a lot of information was coming out about COVID, but there were some language barriers that were in place. So we had to kind of really adjust to kind of really make sure we were able to meet all the needs of all of our students. And we collaborated heavily with our students in transition, our SPED department, and our ELL department. Next slide, please. So what is telehealth? So telehealth is an electronic mechanism in which we use to really support our engagement with families. This is something that we were really looking at, which I said it was the perfect storm. We had already been having conversations with Swope Health Services and some of our partnering programs about implementing telehealth within our schools. And so when COVID hit, it became to be a perfect opportunity to really accelerate those partnerships to kind of move the agenda forward. Next slide, please. This slide just basically kind of talk about some of the research that we kind of looked at and the pros and cons about implementing a telehealth platform as we looked at the next and the best practices. Next slide. Again, more research about the benefits of telehealth and how it's really has been a positive where implementing this new protocol has been really powerful in being able to engage students and families. What we found is some of the stigma around getting therapy and getting the support necessary in our community, sometimes is looked upon as a negative, but through our telehealth platform and being able to engage families in this way, it's been created more of a privacy aspects, and families have been more apt to kind of reach out, as you're going to be able to see in our numbers of families that we've been able to support through this modality. Next slide, please. Training. So one of the big things we had to do was all of our therapists had to get trained on telehealth implementation, the ethics behind it, HIPAA compliance. So this was a huge undertaking with trying to make sure everybody received the training necessary and that we were making sure that we were compliant with all of the necessary requirements for as HIPAA is concerned, FERPA, and all of those guiding organizations that kind of support this work. Next slide, please. So this is an example of, this is the platform that we use and kind of talks a little bit about the implementation of our program. So in order for us to support families, we could not use like a traditional platform like Zoom or FaceTime or anything of that nature. All the platforms that we had to use had to be HIPAA compliant. So through our research and our work with our partner, Diversity Telehealth, we came across this platform as being the best platform for us to use at the time. So TheraLink is the platform. So this is just a little 1-minute video giving you an idea about what telehealth is all about.
As a therapist, you may not always get to see your clients in person, like when clients go off to college, or they're away on business. Perhaps they have to look after a sick child, or maybe the weather gets in the way. Today, an online video session is the answer for professionals to communicate with their clients. But as effective as video technology is, most services are at risk of breaching patient confidentiality. Most services, that is, except for TheraLink. TheraLink is a user-friendly, secure video service that is HIPAA compliant, meaning you can gain your client's trust and keep appointments that may have otherwise been missed. Speak to them in a secure environment at a time that is convenient for both of you, and you won't be at risk of breaking any confidentiality laws. When your clients can't come to you, TheraLink really is the safest, most effective way to communicate. Visit www.theralink.com and get started today.
Okay, next slide, please. So through this pandemic, my team has been able to serve 4,683 families. And of that 4,683 families, 1,125 of those families were new. So one of our first initial focuses were students that we already knew had some social and emotional concerns. So our caseload of students that we were already working with. So we're making sure that we were able to follow up with those families. But through this process of the hotline numbers and reaching out and doing the marketing campaign, we were able to identify an additional 1,125 families that needed our support. And so we were able to provide services to them. So we're very excited about that. There's a little breakdown of some things that we kind of pulled out. 99 of the students that we were able to engage were in crisis, and we were able to provide them with supports necessary to deal with the crises that they were working with. 31 of the families that we were able to engage with had housing issues, meaning that they were, losing their housing and not having proper places to stay. They were in transition. 14 of the cases were, criminal justice related. For instance, situations where someone in the family may had being threatened, maybe, death. Due to murders, things of that nature in the community, and not feeling safe and things of that nature. And then 5 individuals focused on immigration issues where we had to provide support for. Next slide, please. Go back one slide. So wanted to kind of give you guys a glimpse of what this next phase for our telehealth implementation. Like I spoke with you guys, like I said early on, this is a process that we had engaged in early in the year. I'm so excited about this work with telehealth. We had been in conversations with Children's Mercy as well as SWOPE to kind of really move this agenda forward. One of the major initiatives that we're working with with Children's Mercy is our asthma focus on working with our students with asthma. Our nurses, not only our behavioral health side is implementing telehealth, also our nursing department is implementing telehealth as well. They will be focused on our students with chronic conditions and meeting with them and making sure they're getting what they need. And then, really focusing on pushing this at the asthma readiness approach forward with our Children's Mercy partnership. Now, I wanted to show you guys an example of a school-based telehealth program, because when we are ready to welcome students back, we are already have things in place to be able to roll this out, this telehealth program at the school-based level. So trying to give you an example what the next step in our phase of implementing telehealth will look like.
Your kids aren't the only ones getting smarter. Now pediatric medicine is too, with Cook Children's school-based telehealth program, bringing the expertise of Cook Children's to your child's school. A call from the school nurse can affect an entire day for you and your child. Now with Cook Children's school-based telehealth program, it doesn't have to. When your child goes to the school nurse's office, if needed, they can connect virtually for a doctor visit to a Cook Children's board-certified pediatrician or certified nurse practitioner right from the school nurse's office. Here's how it works. Parents have the option of joining the virtual visit by logging into a secure website. The Cook Children's nurse practitioner or doctor will be able to listen to a child's heart, look into their ears and throat, and visually assess the child's other symptoms through specialized equipment the school nurse has on site. Everyone involved, the school nurse, student, doctor, and parent, can all communicate during the visit. If needed, electronic prescriptions can be sent to the family's preferred pharmacy. Some common conditions that can be treated include earaches, fever, flu, strep, coughs and colds, headaches, abrasions, scrapes, rashes, and pink eye. To use this great service, pre-registration by the parent or guardian is required. Insurance and Medicaid will be billed for those students who have eligible coverage. When coverage is not provided, the parent or guardian will be responsible for payment in full. The parent can file with their federal savings account or private insurance carrier for reimbursement. You will have access to all treatment information through the Cook Children's secure website, and rest assured knowing the doctors and staff will follow the patient confidentiality and privacy policies of Cook Children's healthcare system. Sign up now for the school-based telehealth program by clicking the available link and experience how convenient and smart pediatric medicine is becoming. When things get complicated, turn to Cook Children's, because childhood should be simple.
Okay. All right, do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Dr. Woodley. That was very interesting. I'll go ahead and start because I'm sure some of my colleagues will. Are we also working with our families to make sure that they are getting qualified for Medicaid?
Yes. So one of that has definitely been one of the pushes that we have been working. Our family support specialists have been working with our families. We get a report to identify the families that have been removed from Medicaid. Every month. And so our family support specialists work with our families on how to reapply to kind of get get recertified for Medicaid. So that has definitely been a push early on, the beginning of the year, when we saw that massive number of our families were being removed off Medicaid.
And I'm sorry if you said this and I didn't catch it. are the telehealth visits, are they, those would be covered through Medicaid, correct?
Our current telehealth visits, of course, are free, because we're engaging with our clinicians that are covered, that are paid through the district. However, our partners, when we actually, refer students out, we, use our partnering organizations that provide services that are covered through insurance, and then we provide them with free opportunities as well.
Thank you so much. Other colleagues with questions? Any questions? All right. Thank you so much. It's really an important program, and we know that stress is very high right now, and there's a lot of strain on families. It's extraordinary. And so to be able to provide rapid response is really powerful. So thank you, Dr. Woodley.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Woodley. We're ready to move forward. Kelly Waichu will provide an additional update on the KCPS homeroom.
Great. So just wanted to, Joe, is this the first slide of our deck or of our section?
That's the second.
Okay. So we were gonna actually, perfect. We were gonna play the video of our promo again, but you've already seen that. So it's just embedded here for future reference when folks come to our website to see our PowerPoint. So Joe will go to the next slide. And yes, people can reference that. It's been on Twitter, it's been on Facebook, and got one of our highest engagements of our posts in the past couple of weeks. But just a quick review, KCPS Homeroom, our TV show, offers daily K-12 instruction in the core content areas like we referenced earlier. Just wanted to provide an academic outlet for families, not only our KCPS families, but this is able to be accessed by families beyond Kansas City and throughout the whole region. So we reached, or 38th spot reaches almost all the way to Columbia, Missouri in some spots, almost to Lawrence on the west side, down to the southern parts of the city, down even in Harrisonville, southern part of the region. So we're really, in North Kansas City and above, we're reaching numerous students, not only who are KCPS, but students across the region. And we really feel like this is an opportunity for us to not only showcase KCPS, but give us an opportunity to position ourselves as a leader in education and a leader in the marketing and communications role of what it means to engage and educate kids during this pandemic. And so the creative ways in which we're doing so, the opportunity came before us. Justin Robinson on our team is fantastic. As a former reporter, has great connections with TV stations. And this opportunity was just really placed before us as a way to engage and go beyond our walls and think creatively and innovatively about how we can support our kids during this time. That's also a snippet of our press release. Got a lot of good press on it. Just wanted you guys to see that press release, and I think you had it in your Friday update. So these are the 4 goals that we wanted to do, make sure that we were implementing when we launched this TV show. So again, high quality learning opportunities for families, supporting the teaching and learning that's already happening in our classrooms. So right now you see curriculum coordinators who are doing a lot of the taping, a lot of the lessons. But as we get into school starting and our teachers back in the classrooms, we are going to start using more of our teachers to be the ones who are on camera. We are very popular right now. We have lots of interest in it and are getting lots of inquiries about how our teachers can participate and be showcased on KCPS Homeroom. So we're looking at a rotation of our teachers to help with the load and the heavy lifting of that teaching and learning on camera. So you'll see that as we launch school and get our teachers a little bit more on camera, but really happy with our curriculum coordinators. And as Dr. Bedell likes to say, when we showcase talent, people really get to see who we are in KCPS and get to see all the wonderful things that we're doing. And we get nervous about losing good people, but we're not going to lose good people because we're building a culture where they want to stay and be part of KCPS and do these wonderful innovative projects because we're giving them that platform to do so. So again, create interaction and dialogue between KCPS and families in the area. And then also a chance to be proactive. What a great platform for us to utilize to show off, again, our teaching and learning, But also you're seeing some commercials for Paseo. Some of our signature schools are seeing commercials that we sprinkle in there. We saw a back to school special where we had some of our curriculum directors, Dr. Shepard, Dr. Fitzgerald, Dr. Harrison. We gave an overview of the communication aspect. So working on another back to school special where we have multiple superintendents join us and join Dr. Bedell for a conversation, and just how we've approached the school year from multiple school districts. So again, we can be very innovative with this. What does it look like to have sponsors and partners? Maybe it's a partner who has internship opportunities with us, and we do project-based learning on TV and highlight a project from start to finish. What about our ag program at East? Do we get to show off our goats and our gardens over at East and all of the opportunities that our kids have to have ag opportunities beyond high school? So lots of opportunity here with the station, and we are just getting started and just scratching the surface with what we can do in the future with this experience, opportunity, and access for our families. Target audience, kindergarten through 12th graders. And then as you can see down here at the bottom, these are the program dates, times, and locations. So Dr. Jones, when you asked about the channel, it's right here at the spot, but you can see the Spectrum cable channels. I'm gonna move my screen there we go. Channel 18 on cable, and then Google Fiber channel 146. And then as we mentioned, all episodes are chronicled on our YouTube channel so that you can go there and reference back episodes or rewatch whatever you need to watch on our YouTube channel. And then
Hit the page. Oh, here we go.
yeah, this one, we wanted to show some of the feedback on social media that we were getting about KCPS homeroom. So this first one on the left here is actually a North Kansas City parent who's giving us kudos for providing the service for her kids, and that they've been doing the Yoga Fridays and the Fine Arts Fridays, and what a gift to the community. Really wanted to show you guys that we're getting outside eyes on our programming and appreciation. And then from Amanda, this is Lillian. Lillian's going to be a kindergartner at Holiday. And this is a video where, I'm not going to show the video, but it's a video where Lillian talks about her interest in the viola and instruments. And you should go to our Twitter and watch it because it's really adorable. And Lillian loves KCPS homeroom. So, and then of course our tweet about launching it received lots of engagement and hundreds of likes there on Twitter. And then again, I think Dr. Jones, for your reference as well, this is kind of the broadcast schedule, the content and times that we run the different grade levels and those content areas. This is on our website. We posted it on social, but we do have this available on our YouTube and on our website so people can go and see the schedule if they want to see more information. So that was a quick overview, but wanted you all to see as a board, again, some of the details that we've put into this and how proud we are of the product. And I would be remiss if I did not, again, give kudos to Justin Robinson, Jonathan Solomon, Luther Akeo. We also are working with Dee Jackson, who's a teacher at Paseo, and just really launching a quality 1-hour show every day. That's taking a lot of work behind the scenes for production, script writing, programming, talent scheduling. And again, just really proud of the team and really happy to offer this for our community. And we have exciting things to come, and I can't wait to keep showing you the programming.
Thank you, Ms. Wachel. It is fun, and I'll hang this schedule on my refrigerator and I'll tune in. It is very fun and engaging. I'm hoping that 38 The Spot will also help us promote this so that you can get a broader reach in the metro area, because I think that would be fantastic, and somehow making sure that our families really do know about this. So hopefully as our principals are doing back to school events, that they'll, with their families and orientations, there'll be some way for them to highlight that even though you will have school starting, I mean, this is a resource for them to add to what's already going to be happening during school. So thank you.
You got it.
Very much. Appreciate it. Any other questions that you might have for Ms. Wachel? I know we've had a highlight of this previously.
Nope, just continued kudos. This is awesome stuff. And you used the word, I think, at the onset of, leaders. And this is exactly what you guys are doing, right? Like when I saw that tweet from the North Kansas City North Kansas City schools, that, by the way, Dr. Bedell retweeted, which is still weird to see Dr. Bedell on social media. And so every time a tweet comes up from him, I'm not sure if I should be glad or scared. But it's great. And you guys really are leading the way here. And thank you for it, because it's just another, and you said something about this earlier, Dr. Bedell, it's just another sort of notch in our belt, right? Where at some point soon, right, in the next 1, 2, 3 years, this entire district is going to be looked at completely differently than it is today, in the way that it was 4, 5, 6 years ago. And this is just another way in which we get to go do that. And so even beyond COVID, right, let's keep doing this sort of stuff.
Well, the piece that I will continuously say, I think, as we give credit to the folks in the trenches, to Justin Robinsons of the world, the D, our coach, our teacher over at Paseo, Kelly Waichu, for leading this. Just remember this, and I say this to everybody all the time, there's a lot of fingers can be pointed all around. We can't do this if we don't have the financial support. So when we bring these ideas to you and we say, board, we need you to approve for us to have the authority to move forward with this, to give us the space to do it. So all of this, these are accomplishments that go under all of our belts, right? And that's just the reality of it. We're trying to be innovative together. And so we will continue to do everything that we can to try to innovate and move this district forward, but not just be a value add to our kids. I think it's bigger than just KCPS. When I go out here and I'm fighting for TIP, or we're fighting for all of these other things, we're doing this to support our charter colleagues, right? It's not about just being insular in our thinking, even though everything we do, we need to make sure that we're taking care of home. But when we can be a value add like this, I think it's great. And as districts do other things, I've stolen a lot from other districts. I will continue to do so. So, that's how we work in education.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Ms. Wolfsey?
I already said my kudos part earlier, but I would be really interested, Ms. Rachel, if in our Friday, you know how you do the media update part? I wondered if, because I believe what's going to happen with this is, I know there's the eyeball part, right, for the 38 and Google Fiber and the other channels, but as families get to know this, as the word spreads and they start to understand it, and then they start to watch the videos and realize that they can use them to help and assist their students when they're struggling with a concept, if it's on homeroom, I would expect that we'll start to see that in the data for the YouTube channel. And so I would encourage us to, not get discouraged if we don't see it taking off right away, because I think over time it is going to grow. And I would love to see that. I don't know if that's possible to be able to add that to our Friday part there.
Yep, we can do it. Yep, I'll add a new section with that, and we'll get numbers from KSHB on a periodic basis, and so we'll start adding those to see the trends. You bet.
Cool.
And board, we are aggressively going to try to target to see if we can get some additional funding from some of the major funders here in the city. They are willing to give us another hour, and we think there's so much that we can cover in it with an additional hour with the contract price that what it was when you all approved it a couple of months back. So the bigger piece for us, and I talked to Ms. Waitrell about this earlier today, is being able to figure out if there's a funder that will support us with being able to possibly do a consultancy contract with a retired producer of maybe of a news station that want to come in and maybe operate under a 1-year contract to help us to be able to pull off all of the production that needs to take place. So I think we'll both, she and I, along with Nicole Collier-White, will be out trying to figure out how we can make it happen to get another hour of content on. And hopefully we have far more than enough experts in the district that I know would love to be able to be highlighted and showcase their expertise on this TV show. So that's something that we're going to be pursuing here too.
one of the things that I noted in the Friday update for you as board members, and I think it's important for maybe the public and the folks on this call to hear, is that when we do things like KCPS Homeroom and we launch our KCPS magazine this fall, these are all items that allow us to have our own platform and our own channel, of course, to tell our own story, create our own narrative, and be the source of news beyond a filter that it would typically go through. So again, just how innovative, how grateful we are to have this platform. The financial support from you as a board is really important to having our own news channels, our own platforms from which we tell our stories that are unfiltered and completely KCPS based.
Thank you.
All of this will help with marketing. Watch and see.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bedell. I think you have another presentation.
I do, Madam Chair. This is the update on our distance learning meal pickup. As you know, we're starting off the school year on a distance learning platform. Jordan Gordon is here, suited up, and is ready to present to us. Jordan, we're excited to have you here, man, and very excited that you're serving as our director over food services. You've just been phenomenal in this area. So we're going to pass it over to you now.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Good evening, Board of Directors, Cabinet members, and of course, our KCPS community. We would like to start with a brief video to kind of outline what we have been doing and what we believe to be the encompassing body of work, our sole mission and purpose around food and nutrition as a whole. So please give us 2 minutes and we'll cover this video. Perfect. And that video is kind of an illustration that we were able to provide and discuss at a DESE training around food insecurity in the Kansas City market in the first semester of last school year. Leading forward to where we stopped off in June 30th. As it was mentioned earlier, we were able to serve over 300,000 meals to students in and around the Kansas City boundaries. This was all made possible through the scale of our reach under the provisions outlined in the summer feeding program model. In that program model, the greatest flexibility that we have is our ability to simply reach as many kids as we can without regard for what school they actually attend. So essentially under that summer service model, we're able to service all students throughout the district boundaries as long as they participate in one of our programs. On the next slide, we're gonna kind of provide some context and construct to how we are governed as a child nutrition organization. This is paramount and critical as we proceed forward in the upcoming distance learning start of school year. As you can see at the top, the USDA is overall responsible for all school meals programs and issues all of the state guidance and federal regulations for our program. From there, it's passed down to our state agency, which we refer to as DESE, who ultimately monitors and audits our child nutrition program here at the school district. Locally, our ultimate responsibility is to culminate both those federal regulations and those state guidelines and ensure that our program remains compliant while offering innovative services for our students every day. Under the next slide, we're going to discuss some of the waivers that we've been able to engage and apply and receive under the distance learning premise. The first one is the non-congregate feeding waiver. This waiver allows us to feed kids off premise as opposed to being in school. Secondly, it's going to be the meal service time flexibility. Under that provision, we're simply got approval to serve meals at a non-traditional time or different from what we would normally do per building, per school. The parent and guardian pickup allows for students to not be present in the event that they're actively learning and can't make it to the bus stop during distance learning. So under this provision, any adult or any sibling or anyone could access a meal for that child who's sitting at home, actively engaged in their asynchronous and synchronous learning schedules. The meal pattern flexibility is really key as we go forward, as that is our overall governance around what we do and how we serve our food. On the next slide, we're going to discuss briefly what challenging legislation we have before us under the distance learning model. The only one that's still remaining that I'm in active conversation with Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is around our meal claiming and meal tracking process. So how we claim the meals, how we trace the meals back to the home site, and then obviously how do we reconcile that meal for claiming and reimbursement purposes. This is critical because ultimately getting this right will assure that we receive full reimbursement for all of our meals. Under the next slide, we want to talk about the food and how we get from procuring and sourcing and selecting food products to the actual plate. So anything that we initiate and that we bring before our students has to go through our USDA guidelines process. Regardless of what it is, all of its nutritional content has to be examined, weighed, and approved per USDA standards. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the food and its associating costs. So as you can see on the left column, we have kind of a generic scenario of what our actual meal costs were in the most recent school year under the traditional setup. Our meal costs were right at $2 per plate. Our reimbursement rate that we received from DESE was $3.43 with a net margin of $1.43. On the right, you can see the noticeable increase in our meal costs going to $3.30. That is for the obvious purposes of us needing to source additional packaging and additional food items that will fall under that retail segment to ensure that our kids have items that we can safely transport to them and ultimately that they would enjoy eating. Our reimbursement rate went up to $3.60, leaving us with a net margin of 30 cents per meal serving. On the next slide, we're going to give an illustration around really how that food around commodities and retail goes. So traditionally, the USDA commodities are entitlements that we're allowed to access it is at no cost to the school district. Last year, we received just over $700,000 in USDA food items. The yellow segment at 35% is our retail spending. So those are really the dollars that we are budgeted and have allocated towards the menu innovation, ensuring that we're offering a greater percentage of fresh products for our students, and then ultimately scratch-based cooking. On the next slide, we're going to culminate all of this and discuss our up-and-coming Meals on the Bus distance learning program. We kicked that off this past Monday, actually, on August 24th. We were able to get ahead. On the next slide, you'll see a illustration of what our first day out in our communities look like. Over the past 2 weeks, we got our staff trained, we got them prepared, and we ensured that they understood all of the safety protocols in alignment with CDC and local health department guidelines. This was a tremendous value add. It was really nice to see our families connect with us. Our staff were really excited about being able to connect with the families. On the next side, you're going to get a clear picture of what's actually in that bag. So keeping along those same sense of our 35% retail markup, those assure us the opportunity to serve our students things that I would enjoy eating at home, you would enjoy eating at home. So the packaging, we've done a lot of research and analysis around how to stress test the packaging to ensure that we can safely store and serve the students their breakfast and lunch every single day. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the delivery schedule, kind of the nuts and bolts around what food service Meals on the Bus will look like for the start of our distance learning phase. All of our students will receive their daily meals Monday through Friday between the hours of 11 and 1:30. That is encompassing by our partnership with the transportation department. We have just under 190 bus stops in all of our KCPS boundaries. So regardless of where the student is physically distant learning, whether it's with a parent, a guardian, a neighbor, a friend, or another caregiver while their parents go to work, our students or the adults are welcome to access any of our food locations via the bus schedule during those set hours. Our last point that we want to highlight is really around our family support line. So we started this 418 food line right around April, kind of as things kicked off with the shutdown, as a quick way to access our families should they need additional help. We revamped that and kind of redesigned its intended purpose. So with this, we're able to connect with our families in real time. So instead of them trying to call one of our child nutrition staff or inadvertently calling the main line and getting someone sent to a voicemail, they can contact our offices directly. Our admin staff are there in person to support the real-time needs and requests of our families. And then also they help us identify real-time opportunities that we have the benefit to simply resolve immediately as opposed to something going unresolved for our families. Our last slide is for y'all. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. It is exciting and it is monumental to think of 314,000 meals, summer meals served. It's extraordinary. It's an incredible community service. You have a team of food service staff who I know are amazing. I had the chance to stop by a couple of the summer food sites, so and cheer them on. But it's incredible. It's such a important service. There's no I think overstating that. So I'll open it up for questions from my colleagues. Mr. Abarca.
Mr. Gordon, I can't thank you enough for the work that you do and the dedication of your team. Your video struck me right at the core, the beginning, right? I mean, I remember being one of those students waiting in line thinking, oh man, I hope my account has enough money because I don't want to put this milk back. So it definitely rings true. And I know that the work that you do to make sure that our students are getting the nutrition they need to be successful is paramount to our overall success as a district. So thank you for that. I guess my question revolves around some of the USDA flexibilities that may change, right? And I think this becomes an opportunity for us to become stronger advocates as it comes to HEROES Act, federally, and some of the other necessary changes to make sure that you're able to serve these students as we maintain distance learning at this point, right? I mean, I think the administration has made it very clear that they want students back in school. So can you just reiterate, what that means if some of these USDA programs don't get recertified to allow for some of these flexibilities that you took advantage of this summer, and tell us how we can be greater advocates there for you?
Absolutely. So the biggest point is around the difference between the summer feeding program versus the national school and lunch breakfast program. And both of those programs, where our main objective is to feed students. What we've discovered that has not been extended is that summer feeding flexibility. So what that means and how that translates to what we do now is that we know that we're nestled right in the midst of a lot of different charter schools in our boundaries. So those students, by and large, have the same needs that our students may have as well. So when it comes to meal reimbursement, under this current national school breakfast regulation, we will only be reimbursed for the meals that we serve to only our students. If we were to serve a meal to a non-KCPS student, then we would not be reimbursed for that. Obviously, no one on my team nor myself or in this organization is in the business of turning away students. So every student that approaches us, we will ensure leaves with the meal. Our team is set in place to kind of earmark those schools that where we see a high traffic of, but we'll have to remove those from our allowable reimbursement claim.
Yeah, just one follow-up there. I think this is where some of the advocacy has to come from the board level, because right now that approval to allow for those reimbursements to occur is in the Senate, and the Senate has not taken up any action on that specific reimbursement. So this is the U.S. Senate. So I think it is incumbent upon us to press, and for the public who's listening, for you all to call your members of the U.S. Senate to make sure that they understand how important this is, because these are kids that need this supplemental food and nutrition. And kudos to you, Mr. Gordon, and the team, KCPS at large, for not turning these students away, right? I mean, because we could easily say, sorry, charter schools, we can't play with your students. It's a pay-to-play method. And I think others with less integrity than us and Dr. Bedell would probably do that. But, this is why it's important to be involved in that political process and advocate on behalf of the larger system. So again, thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Dr. Bedell, for team supporting all this. But we need to do our part now.
Thank you.
Ms. Cortez,
I really wanted to extend my thank you to Dr. Bedell and all of his team members who presented about the terrific work that you're doing. Dr. Woodley, Ms. Wachel, Mr. Gordon, and Mr. Phillips as well, with regard to technology. I cannot tell you how many times a week I have people ask me in meetings, so what's KCPS doing? And I'll answer their question, their specific question about food or about academic access or about technology or about social emotional wellness. And then, the response is, well, but what are you doing about X? And when there's an answer for each of those questions, I think it gives people a very different sense of the depth of thinking and creativity that the whole organization is employing. And I know I'm echoing my colleagues, but I mean, truly every day someone asks these questions. And to be able to, I really appreciate your taking the time tonight to give us that same depth so that we can convey that and so the community can hear it. I think we're going to have to talk about this over and over and over because people forget. And in the current time, where 1 hour equals 1 day and 1 day equals 1 month, next week, this questions will start over again. So truly to each of you, thank you for kind of continuing to press. I know that it's hard to be so intense for so long, and we've got a lot more out ahead, but it's, we at the board level understand and appreciate how far you're going to make this happen.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask the question related to this structure I think that you've created. I've seen, in some news stories of other school districts letting go some of their food service workers, and even, where there's issues with bus transportation, because if you're not transporting children. So I guess this is a question both for Mr. Gordon, but also Dr. Bedell. The way we've structured this service seemingly is allowing us to also support the continuity of some very valued employees. And I don't know if there's any comments on that you have.
Jordan, you want to go and then I'll follow up?
Sure, I'll give the food service perspective. So you're absolutely right, Board Chair. We are, our vision, my goal is that we're able to scale and reach to the 90 percentile of what we normally would serve under normal circumstances. Nationally, I've spoken with several food service directors and CEPs communities of large scale. Nationally, we're seeing about a 10% participation under this Meals on the Bus program. I'm grateful and I'm elated to say that we're only technically 2 or 3 days in right now, and we've already broached that 10% national threshold. So my goal is that we're able to reach as many kids as we can through this, and as a byproduct of that, we're obviously going to have more than enough work to sustain our own staff with that volume.
And Ms. Manser, to follow up on your question, just from a system standpoint, I've stated this probably at our previous board meeting. Our issue isn't the inability to, we have the money to pay people. Our issue is making sure that we're able to pay people for services provided. We're not going to be in a scenario where we can tell people you're going to stay home and we're going to be able to continue to pay you. I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer funds. That is the reason why we're doing what Jordan Gordon presented to you. That is the reason why we were trying to do what we could to work not only with Link, but even some other providers. And we'll talk to Ms. Cortez tomorrow about some ideas around how could we utilize some other potential partners to help us where we could take paraprofessionals or some other employees that right now we can't use them in that manner, but how could we utilize them to help us provide support and services for some of our kids, for families that may need that child care support. So we want to try to reimagine how we can utilize people in the interim until we can get back into our buildings so that we don't have to be in a situation where we're having to furlough people. And it's a very difficult conversation to have, but there's a reality that we do have to have it. But so if the district can do what it can to try to reimagine and utilize our faculty and staff members differently, but still get the return that we need, I think that we won't be in a situation where we're having to have this conversation. So that's the reason why we're trying to do some of these things differently and think outside the box and leverage potential partnerships so that we can keep people employed.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I don't see any other questions or hand waving at me. So Dr. Bedell, I believe we're ready to move on now to the regular business items, unless you have any additional commentary.
No, I don't. I do want to thank our team. I think every time we go through these presentations, I say this every meeting, and anybody that go back and they review the live stream of these presentations, the quality of the people that we have in this school district, as hard and as difficult of an assignment that this can be for all of us, when you have quality people, you get the results that we're getting. That's why I'm so excited about hopefully when we come into October, and you'll hear it probably earlier than that, for us when we give you the update on our strategic plan scorecard and the data that points that we've gotten back. I mean, you guys are going to be really happy with the progress that this school district is making, just with those data points that we were able to collect as of March of this year. But this is because of the quality of the people that we have, that we're able to execute and get these things done. A lot of the stuff that we put out looks really good, and we're getting a lot of great reviews. It's all for nothing if we don't execute. That's just the bottom line. So the big piece for us is making sure that we're able to execute come the 24th, and we're ready to rock and roll until we can get our students back in front of our teachers inside of these school walls. So I do want to give kudos to the team. And I think at this point, I'm ready to move on to the next item, policy and governance. And this is where we are asking the board to take action on the adoption or updating of policies to Board Policy Appendix D, BBFA, Board Conflict of Interest, IKF, graduation requirements, IC, and academic calendar, and JG, student discipline policies.
All right. Are there any questions from my colleagues on these adoption of policies? This is a process we go through where when new regulations or state laws are implemented, MSBA, their legal department and policy reviewers bring back recommendations to school districts across the state as to policy changes that we need to adopt to remain compliant with changes in law and regulations. So I want to just check to see if there are any questions regarding these policies. Ms. Cortez?
Thank you. And this may be a question for Mr. Thornton. I'm not sure. I think it was his team that drafts. So the policy BBFA around conflicts of interest implies that there's a second step that has to be taken for the policy to be effective. Is there, and that is setting a dollar limit or some kind of limit on any gifts that would be received by a board member within the terms of the policy? Do you have a sense of what the time frame would be that we need to make that decision and adopt the component that makes the policy effective and enforceable?
I don't, and I don't know if there was a time limit given. I think what MSBA said is that this is something that they want to put into the hands of each board. But I'll check, but I don't remember there being any kind of time limit on when that that policy about what is appropriate should be completed, but I'll check.
Okay. I mean, I think I would, Ms. Manser, I would encourage that we put this on a board work list soon, because to have a policy that says that we have a policy of a certain amount, and then to hold ourselves accountable will be a little bit difficult until we've identified what that threshold is. So I'm not into the policy. I just think we have to complete the work.
Yeah, because if you look at the old policy, what they got rid of was it said board members will not accept a value of excess of $100.
Right.
And I think they wanted to give each school board the authority to be able to set their own limits.
So we have a previous policy, but I think one thing that we could do, Mr. Thornton, is just to seek maybe some also understanding of what some of our peer school districts are maybe doing around the state, maybe contacting through MSBA and through their legal department. Would that be possible?
Sure, I can check on that.
Yep. So, Madam Chair, can I make a recommendation here? I mean, and I think I understood what Mr. Thornton just said, but can we make this really, really easy and just take a bit of a pulse on whether or not we feel like that $100 should just stay $100 and move on, or just figure out a dollar limit now and set that in our policy? Or is there do people feel like there needs to be sort of a lengthy discussion around it?
I don't know if I think there needs to be a lengthy discussion. I guess I would be interested to hear if other school districts of similar size to us maybe are, if they're creating additional limits, if their policies are more, if they're scaling them down. So but I don't have any reason to think that it would be lengthy, but I think I was advising that Mr. Thornton could connect with MSBA, which works with school districts across the state, to get a sense of where other boards are on this particular item. I know there's a lot of interest right now, and as school districts are struggling with financials and they're seeing changes in their, there have been reports of school districts where they're furloughing employees and they're implementing pay cuts. And I know they're looking at other austerity measures. And so I don't know whether that's going to play out and at what board members set for their limits as well. But I'm open to the discussion of the board. Are there any thoughts from the board as to what you'd want to do?
I'd like to actually see what the others are. I just think it's a good practice to always check what our peers are doing and then use that as a guiding. It may be a 5-second discussion after we see what they've also come up with.
Yeah, I would add that I would just hate for us to pull out an arbitrary number that may be so far away from or close to someone else of equitable size. So I think that's probably good practice.
Patty, I have a question. One of my former clients has been talking about taking me on a 2-week vacation to Australia. Would that be covered under this policy?
It sounds like that's a personal journey unrelated to school district business, but if it were
Totally. He just wants to take his girlfriend to Australia, and he asked me if he got me a ticket, whether I'd like to go along.
I think, Mr. Wasserstrom, we can definitely talk and offline and with Mr. Thornton, but if it were with an individual who had was currently doing business or seeking to do business with KCPS, then that would fall into a different category of a potential conflict of interest. So we can discuss that offline. Are there any other thoughts? Are we good with coming back on the 9th, just knowing at least what Springfield, Columbia, maybe Blue Springs, and St. Louis, to see if there's just where they stand in terms of their numbers, and then coming to agreement on our mark?
Yeah.
Ms. Cortez?
Maybe I'm trying to split the baby, but my instinct would be to put $100 in there, since that was the number that would be there until we approve this policy. And then if we come back with different information, we can modify the policy. But having a policy with no number seems a little odd.
Okay. I assumed we could just hold that $100 as current practice, but maybe not, because we're adopting a new policy. Mr. Thornton, would that be advisable? By adopting this policy, are we nullifying the $100 limit?
Well, it doesn't change until you accept it. So what I would say is that if you have any questions about what that amount should be, I would just wait on this one until September 9th, and then bring it back to the board for a vote.
Okay, so Mr. Thornton, you're recommending that you're proposing to us that we would set aside adoption of BBFA until September 9th.
Yes, if you have questions, you want to see what other school districts are doing, and have me ask MSBA, if they have any idea, then as opposed, you don't have to change it. Well, I'd say there's no need in changing it like twice, So once you're comfortable with the number, then I think that's when you should go ahead and vote on it. That would be my recommendation.
All right, so we're not out of compliance if we don't vote on this one today.
No, but we do have to adopt it on the 9th, because isn't this the one that has to be in place by September 15th?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay. So we will add this to our calendar on September 9th. And in the meantime, Mr. Thornton, if you can help us get that information from some of the other similarly sized school districts from their boards. So at this point, then we are looking at graduation requirements, an academic calendar, and student discipline policies. Are there any additional questions on these items? Hearing none, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve policy IKF, IC, and JG.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I want to catch something just to be safe. You said IKF, and isn't that the board conflict of interest that you all are saying you're going to hold off on until the 9th?
I think that's BBFA, actually.
Right, he's right.
Is it? Board conflict of interest is IKF?
Yeah.
Okay.
I misstated at the beginning. Sorry about that.
Yep.
All right. So we're talking about.
If I may, BBFA is board conflict of interest. IC academics calendar. IKF graduation requirements.
Right.
JG student discipline.
That's correct.
Okay, so I think the way that the punctuation here is throwing me off. So I wanted to make sure that that y'all wasn't making that mistake. That's all.
Okay. So just to be clear, the motion is on IKF, IC, and JG. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. I see June Kolkmeyer nodding. All right. And I have the motion and the second, correct?
Yes.
And no other debate on the motion. So with that, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Banser?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you. There's a majority in favor and the motion passes. I want to ask the board secretary to add BBFA to the agenda for September 9th.
Thank you.
With this, Dr. Bedell, I believe we now turn to the regular business items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item on the regular business item is the administration is asking the board to take action on Sherwood Center. First amendment in the amount of $272,436.14.
Are there any questions on this item? I wanted to ask Dr. Bedell to make sure that I'm fully clear on the Sherwood Center. This is for the coming year's services, and this is not anything that catches up from, this does have a component, no, that catches up from last year.
Yeah, this is for the upcoming school year.
Okay.
But we have also, if I'm not mistaken, and Bill may have updated everybody at the last board meeting, we've negotiated with them. We've changed language in the contract. So what we've run into with a number of these vendors will not be an issue because that language is embedded into the contract for the upcoming year.
Okay, so the language pertaining to services rendered, correct?
That's correct. I believe, Bill, is that correct? or Linda. I know I'm just trying to catch up on this one because I've been out.
Yeah, ask me that question again. I'm sorry, Dr. Bedell. I was looking at something else. I was looking at that the last thing we just talked about. So can you ask me that question again?
Sherwood Center First Amendment, which is the increase for the upcoming fiscal school year for services with them, but we also negotiated in that contract around services rendered and how the district would negotiate with them regarding if we have interruptions like we've had this year, what the potential payment negotiations may be. So I believe that's what.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because what we did, right, it was for folks that couldn't perform in full. So what we did was we worked with them to have them validate what they did do so we could pay them for services rendered. And yeah, so that's what we negotiated with those folks, yes.
So I think
Dr. Bedell, excuse me, this is Linda. Yeah. If I could, this amendment is for 1920 so that we can close it out because the final payment was going to come in at an amount greater than what the board had authorized under its contract for 1920.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm just trying to, I'm sorry, folks, on this
one. Yeah, you just got back.
Lagging, just getting back.
Okay, so Ms. Quinley, then we are picking up, we are closing out the contract from last year and then extending into this current year.
I would imagine that, yes, the contract extends and it will be updated for you as that final language gets available.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. And then I think the second question I have is similar. We've had this discussion about some other of our contracts. We now have a process where legal or business and financial department have done a scan of contracts to know that we have been able to now establish the kind of language that gives us, that provides clarity to our vendors regarding services rendered.
Yes, legal is working with procurement on those as they come up one at a time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on this item? All right, hearing none, it would be in order to have a motion to approve the Sherwood Center First Amendment in the amount of from $1,116,856 to $1,389,292, an increase of $272,436.
So moved.
Second.
It is moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan? Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom? Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
There's a majority in favor and the Sherwood Center First Amendment is approved. The next item, Dr. Bedell.
Next item is the board's asking the administration's asking the board to take action on the contract with Illuminate DNA. This is the platform we will utilize for our student assessments and data management, in particular our formative assessments. It will also replace Achievement Series, which we believe this platform will give us more robust information on being able to track how our students are performing. It's in the amount of $294,500.
Are there questions on this item? Dr. Bedell, this is to enhance some of the performance assessments that were academic achievement assessments that we're having to pick. Is this in to provide us some interim guidance on how our students are doing?
Yeah, and Dr. Shepard or David, either one of you can weigh in on it, but it's my understanding that this is the replacement for Achievement Series. That was something that we were utilizing in the past, and this is a more robust tool to be able to help us address the standards and the standards that the state has put in front of us for our students.
Yeah, if I could jump in, yes, that is correct. It is replacing Achievement Series. A big problem with Achievement Series is it didn't have technology enhanced items, and it was kind of limited in what we were able to do. And so Illuminate, and just to let you know, this is the 294.5 is for a 3-year contract. So it is a little bit under 100,000 each year, which is a very comparable cost to Achievement Series. But yes, this will provide the district with a platform to roll out our formative and interim assessments that we push out from a district level. We've been talking with CIPD about creating a first interim a couple of months, into the school year that'll really help our folks get an idea of how students are progressing towards mastery of standards. As far as kind of gauging learning loss, we'd actually be doing that with our initial iReady testing that we'll do a few weeks after the start of school. That'll give our schools a starting point and a baseline for where our kids are, so then we can start tracking how they're performing towards grade level and state expectations.
Thank you. Ms. Cortez?
Can I just, to Mr. Rand, how does iReady intersect with this software? I mean, do they duplicate each other? Is one a precursor to the other? Do they inform each other? Does the data move between the two systems? I know that.
Yes.
I don't know tech, so educate
yes.
us.
Yeah, good question. So they are separate. They don't duplicate functions. iReady is more of a pre-built standardized measure that tells our students how they're performing relative to kind of a norm referenced, or how do all the other kids, that are your grade level, how do you perform, against them. It's also iReady has kind of an instructional pathway that, based on the diagnostic assessment, it'll put kids into kind of an instructional pathway that provides them with online lessons and resources that are intended to help the students towards mastering their learning goals. The Illuminate and DNA is a separate system. It's more of an item bank and test delivery platform where we can create our own assessments and then deliver those to our students. The integration availability is that with Illuminate, the assessment platform, the item bank, there's also kind of a data dashboard part of that, in which we're able to then pull in iReady scores. And so when teachers get into Illuminate, not only will they have access to the platform to administer their own assessments, administer the district assessments, we'll also have the ability to pull in other data, iReady data and other data, so that our teachers aren't having to hopefully flip between systems as much as possible. I think in an ideal situation, it would all be the same system. And so there'd be a single login, and we would have, ideally the things that iReady provides in combination with what Illuminate provides, but under one kind of system, to avoid kind of that two different system logging in type issue. So that's definitely something that we'll be considering moving forward. If it makes sense to try to find something that would be in one system. But currently there are two different systems. They're not duplicating each other, and we're able to pull the iReady information into the Illuminate to help teachers with having to go to too many places to get their data and information.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you for that additional explanation. That was helpful. If there are no other questions, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve the contract with Illuminate DNA. And I
moved.
would entertain that motion now.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey,
Yes.
Thank you. There's a majority in favor and the purchase of Illuminate is approved. The next item, Dr. Bedell?
Next item is the Discovery Education contract. This is a contract that will further support us with our digital platform of providing the resources needed for our students. As you all know, we've utilized Discovery Education in the past, notably the science tech books, which really paid huge dividends, something that our coordinators appreciated, our teachers enjoyed, and we saw our gains in proficiency rates and MPI performance on science on a much more rigorous assessment. And so we are expanding our partnership with some additional curricular products to help us with our digital platform in the amount of $342,975. Dr. Shepard or Dr. Fitzgerald, if there are any questions, they're here to provide some questions, some support if needed.
Are there any questions on this item? I have one question that may not have an answer for today, but Dr. Bedell, I think it kind of comes back to a little bit to a request that Ms. Cortez made earlier, I think regarding all the digital learning platforms and tools that we are purchasing. We're making substantial acquisition on all of these items. And not only would it be valuable, I think, to get a sense of the totality of that, but for future discussion, I'd be interested in hearing how we assess the utility and effectiveness of those over time. And I'm assuming that Mr. Rand will be part of that process of really making determinations of, when we're investing a lot in these kinds of tools, how do we then go back and examine their usage and value over time to our district? So it's just...
Yeah. We can definitely do that, but I think for us, a lot of it has to do with ultimately at the end of the year, how are we performing on these statewide assessments that we're held highly accountable for, and being able to demonstrate whether the district's making the expected growth or better. I think is the easiest way that we can provide a measurement to you all on the efficacy of these products.
Agreed. And I think we do have some in November. We're scheduled in our policy monitoring workshop for a discussion on student academic performance.
Sure. Yep.
I believe I see that on our monitoring schedule. All right. Are there any other questions on the agreement with Discovery Education in the amount of...
Barker had a question.
Okay, Mr. Barker, I'm sorry.
More of a statement. I think this is a great opportunity. I mean, seeing the success of our previous acquisition, I would just encourage Dr. Bedell and team to present any opportunity like this to us, because we have the age-old adage, right, of the school board doesn't buy books and blah, 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 blah. But these opportunities, I think, are pivotal for us to advance academically. So I would just kudos to you all for bringing this to us. And please know that I personally would love to see more opportunities where we can make these types of purchases that obviously have high results when it comes to our testing scores. So,
sure thing. Sure thing.
Any other comments? I don't see any. So it would now be in order to receive a motion for approval of the Discovery Education contract in the amount of $342,975.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom, Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a majority in favor of the agreement for Discovery Ed, and it is approved. The next item of business, Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item of business is the Student Code of Conduct. We're asking the board to take action to adopt the 2021 Student Code of Conduct. The amount is in the amount of $19,500. I know there will be discussion on this, and what I want to do is provide an update to our viewers that we do realize that there's a lot of work that need to be done with our Student Code of Conduct. 2 weeks ago, you all had an opportunity to listen to Dr. Darrell's presentation. We started our Office of Equity and Innovations last year, and one of the things that Dr. Davis was charged with was to put together a steering committee of stakeholders that included a parent and some staff members. This team worked with experts in Indianapolis several times throughout the year, and they came together to put together a framework that would allow for us to apply an equity lens in how we move forward. How do we adhere to Equity Policy 0.0? That means it requires that we have to begin to unpack policies. We have to write new policies. We have to abandon policies that are no longer relevant in this school district. And in that process, Dr. Davis provided a framework that we will utilize. The Student Code of Conduct is one of the areas where we know as a school district, we have a lot of work to do. And we want to make sure that as we are evolving with our Student Code of Conduct, that we are eliminating disparities and we're eliminating things that further perpetuate inequities and oftentimes racial inequities or socioeconomic status inequities. So we recognize from several of our board members who've expressed concern about the language in there that we have work to do. And what I've shared with the board earlier is that, you know, in my opinion, this is something that may take us a year to get through that process of engaging the community, doing it the right way, utilizing the framework. I do plan on getting back with my team to see if we can expedite that, but I want to make sure that we really do look at some of the language and the way that things are written in that Student Code of Conduct. And what's more important is the implementation of what's been put in there. It's a 74-page document. We believe that there's opportunities to scale back on how much content is in there, so it's easier for our parents to understand. But we are going to be fully committed to doing that. And I think that's, well, you know, my assurance to this board is that's the work that we will do. We will provide a timeline on how we're going to move forward with that. We've heard you loud and clear. And listen, we fully understand and actually support the position that that several of you have raised. I don't believe that in 2 or 4 weeks we would be able to give this full due diligence at this point. So I do want to make sure that I'm putting that out as you all get ready to deliberate and then cast your votes on the Student Code of Conduct. And then whatever you all then decide to charge us with, we'll move forward with that and support it.
All right. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you have for the administration regarding the Student Code of Conduct. So I can't tell who's got a hand raised. Dr. Jones?
So thank you. And thank you for the description of kind of where you've been and where you're trying to go, Dr. Bedell. I think that some questions I would have, so it's a question and a comment. The question would be that how do we, I guess I should rephrase this, is there like a logic model for how, or logic model like structure for how we perceive the types of disciplinary recommendations or allowances in the Code of Conduct? Do we have some sort of logic model as to how the behavior occurs, the disciplinary action takes place, and what outcome we hope to see from that? And so, like, if anyone, you know, I'm sure many people have seen logic models, almost everyone on here has seen one. And we have to show how our activities lead to the outcomes that we're looking for. And so just at that kind of basic level, I'm wondering if that is something that is on your list to review, or has someone already reviewed it? I'll stop there. I'll pause there.
Yeah, and I'll let Dr. Woodley tackle this, and we have Darren Washington, and then I'll come in on the back if I need to.
Yeah, so Dr. Jones, this is definitely something that we are looking at. As you know, we received VOCA funding for trauma-informed care that we started in January, and we actually have a process in place to have school teams where we look at the behaviors that are going on. Dr. Davis talked about the equity audits last board meeting, that we look at the data and try to identify what are the issues that are presented in a building and what is the outcomes that we're looking to receive. And that, you know, and looking at the punishment that is given, and then how do we restore students back. So all those pieces are things that we are in the process of actually laying out. Like I said, I am the head of the steering committee for the equity work that's being done, and the reworking of what we look at for our discipline policy, as well as we have partnerships with CCR, which every teacher in our district over the next 3 years are going to be charged with going through a discipline that restores training, a 2-day training that's required to kind of talk about bias, that talks about de-escalation, that talks about trauma-informed care. Every administrator will go through a 4-day training with Center for Conflict Resolutions. We have a partnership with Alive and Well that provides us with coaches that's going into buildings to actually look at how we implement our policies as far as behaviors and building relationships and trauma-informed practices with students. So we have made a commitment to this work to kind of roll out this plan over the next 3 years with the VOCA grant funding, as well as with the equity steering committee. So yes, that is something that we are definitely looking at and developing a framework for.
Dr. Jones, do you have any follow-up?
And I know Dr. Darren Washington wanted to also follow up on that response.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mr. Washington. I'm the Student Discipline Officer for the school district. And one of the things that I was hearing Dr. Willie, the other thing that I want to add is that we just had a conversation with First Call in regards to working with them to provide some additional services within our district for drug assessments, as well as life skill trainings. We also talked to them about anger management classes. So they've already worked in some of our schools, Success Academy at Anderson, our alternative high school, as well as some of the elementary schools. So we had the conversation the other day, and then they will send us some more information, and then we're trying to figure out how to best roll that out for next year so we can really impact more schools in our system. The other thing I wanted to say is I sent Dr. Bedell an email. I did watch the August 12th with Dr. Davis, and me and him have also had a couple of conversations since probably for the past month in regards to this whole code of conduct. And so what I explained is that the process that we've been utilizing is not working. So we need to revamp the whole process and start fresh at the beginning of the school year. And that process would last through the school year instead of starting like late March and having those conversations. So when I spoke to some of the parents, they asked about having departments and the code, me coming to the SDAC and speak about different process procedures in the schools and those type of things. So I think it's the code and the language that's used in the code, and I probably need to work on that as well when it comes to the equity lens. So work in building that up, but then also is to make sure that we're getting out there to talk to staff as well as parents to make sure there's a clear understanding of process and procedures in the school, because when they understand those process procedures in the schools and what they can do to have those conversations with administrations as well, and the support that we give them through our office, then I think it'd be a better clarification on the whole process.
Dr. Jones. you were.
Go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Okay, so thank you for that. And so what I'm hearing is that you guys are kind of applying different tools to try to revamp, and that the process can take a little time. And so the big thing that sticks out to me is that while we are in a process of revamping, assuming that maybe by this time next year, kids are going back actually in our schools, at least at the latest, they are back in school at that point. My concern, and something I want to keep in the forefront of our mind, is that there are generations of children who are cohorts, is the more appropriate term, I guess, cohorts of students who are going through. So a process that finalizes in 3 years, we finally gotten to a place of trauma sensitive training has been infused. Our code of conduct has finally been analyzed and policies have finally come into fruition. We still at that point have lost 2 years of students who have been subjected to policies that are very subjective and leave a lot of room for bias and error. And so I just want to keep that sense of urgency. I know you guys have it. We've discussed it. And so this is for everyone listening, that we have to continue to have a sense of urgency around this. It's not something we can take through like a super long academic process. I understand wanting to have teacher and stakeholder buy-in, but they also have to understand that there has to be a sense of urgency. Y'all, please bear with me. I have a little bit of data just because that's how I roll. But so, I don't have to tell you about the studies that have shown that African-American and Latinx students are disproportionately affected by suspensions and harsh discipline practices. You know that. But when we talk about even understanding that there's a relationship between student achievement and suspension. So studies have also found that children who are disciplined more frequently and more harshly, those kids are less likely to graduate and succeed. It actually makes their achievement go down. And so some of the studies in kind of the past 5 years had been showing sort of that correlation, but you couldn't tell, well, maybe those kids would have just been doing poorly anyway. Well, a study that came out this year actually did an analysis in where they matched students who had not been suspended and harshly disciplined with the ones who were, but they were the same on all the other metrics. So same socioeconomic level, same history of trauma or lack thereof, all of that. They matched them on like 60 characteristics. And what they found was the only difference in whether a kid actually succeeded to graduated high school. The other metric was getting a degree, a 4-year degree, not being arrested, and not being on probation, was whether that kid went through suspension. So they found what the conclusion was, and I'm going to forward all of this to you guys afterward, but what the conclusion was that no, the disciplinary practice changed the trajectory of that child's life. And so that's something that I think about, and I think about all of my peers and the friends I know. I don't know a single parent whose child has not drawn on a wall at school, gotten up out of their seat too many times, spoken when they weren't supposed to be speaking, or chronically did those things. And chronically doing that right now in our code of conduct is a class 3 offense. So maybe we say that, well, getting out of your seat might be class 1 or 2, but there are tools and there's scaffolding in a document that says if you do it some unknown number of times and it's chronic, that's class 3. And so those are some of the things that really stood out to me as not only not reflecting our commitment to equity and reducing barriers and disparities, but just also our lack of alignment to just sort of basic principles around trauma sensitivity. Like, I know that this process can take some time. I understand that, but we've been talking about trauma sensitive care and trauma aware. We've been talking about that for before I was on the board, and so some simple things that can be going in to just say, hey, we're not going to have a statement. A statement that says all district personnel responsible for the care and supervision are authorized to hold every student strictly accountable for any, emphasis mine, disorderly conduct in school on any property of the school. And so one of the comments that I made in my review was just that it sounds sometimes, whether we're talking about the school or we're talking about the bus or what have you, we're talking about prisoners or we're talking about people who are in some means incarcerated. And so I really want us, sorry I'm being long-winded here, I really want us to think about and remember that these are children. These are beings with unformed brains that we're dealing with. A child is going to draw on the wall. A child is going to get up out their seat. A child is going to talk. A child might even be defiant. I mean, but that doesn't mean that we have a right to give the strictest letter of the law as far as our code of conduct and throw that on their head. I can't support anything that does that. And I hear that there's going to be progress. I just want us to remember it has to be done quickly and thoughtfully. I understand, but some things I think we intuitively know are not right. Like there's enough evidence and enough data and enough research support and all of that to tell us, okay, we definitely have to take that piece out. We definitely have to change that. We definitely have to firm up the definitions for something like that. So I know there are some big things that will require collaboration, but that's not going to be everything. So, okay, I'll pause.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jones. I appreciate, hearing your comments and your voice in this. And what I want to, just kind of reiterate to the board and to the community that we have seen, we are not just saying that it's going to take time. We begin to put boots on the ground in this work, beginning this year. And you saw, based on the data that we brought back, our declines in our discipline referrals, our declines in our number of days of students being out due to discipline issues, the additional levels of supports that students were receiving. We took almost 90 individuals from all different schools to the Trauma Informed Conference. We started our teams on this work to really look at what was going on in the building. So we are definitely dedicated to this work, and you have my commitment that this is definitely a priority, and we're not dragging our feet in this area. We are really moving the agenda forward.
Yeah, we'll definitely 100% take a look. And you're right, Dr. Jones. There's some fruit already on the ground that can easily be picked up that we can immediately begin to make changes to. There are much bigger policy implications, and we've already talked about some of those components with the board that we have to think about as we look at suspensions. And I think that's going to probably take a little bit more time, and that would be through the work of with Dr. Davis. I know Dr. Davis just asked if he could chime in real quick. I think he's on the line somewhere. And Dr. Davis, that you're more than welcome to. I do want to keep everybody in mind. We still got several other items, and it's 9:01, and we got some more presentations here. So just Daryl, keep the points short and quick to the point, so because we may have some other questions from board members.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bedell. I will keep this real brief. At the last board meeting, it was requested to have the discipline disparity data that was shared last time broken down by zones. And so we have that data. You'll have it this Friday, and the Friday update is broken down by the Northeast, East, Central, Southeast zones, as well as signature schools will comprise a fifth zone. And so you'll have that. The interesting thing about it is that in each of the 5 zones, we continue to see the same disparities, as relates to our ethnic breakdown. And so I think to Dr. Jones' point, we do have some urgent work to do, especially as it relates to our administrators who are on the front line. So we know that no student suspends himself or herself. And so essentially really exploring that bias and to look at this practice of exclusion as deterrence, does not work. And so if we simply could, suspend the child for more days in hopes that, they'll get the lesson, they'll come back and it will change behavior, we would see a different outcome. We don't see a different outcome with that practice, not in Kansas City Public Schools, nor has it been proven to work anywhere in the country. And so we will definitely be aggressive in providing that training with principals, and that those equity audits are coming out soon. And so they'll be able to see their school-wide data in order to reach a different outcome. So just wanted to provide that update, and you'll see that that data you requested this Friday in the Friday packet. Thank you.
Questions on code of conduct, Mr. Hogan or Ms. Cortez? I can't tell.
Go ahead. All right, I'll jump in. So this is tough for me. I'll just be honest, because I have a mix of emotions on this. Some of it's frustration, some of it's disappointment. I mean, I'll just be clear. If we really fundamentally believe that equity is the foundation by which everything else gets built upon, and that it is sort of the framework by which we look at how we educate our kids, how we treat them when they're in our schools, etc. And, Dr. Bedell, you talk about equity all the time out in the community. And, you send messages to city council and other organizations about how important it is. And I believe that's from your heart. It's hard for me, though, to wrap my head around the narrative that we started the work in January. So the code of conduct is an annual exercise, right? We've known about the disparities that exist and the inequities that exist for students of color as it relates to suspensions for, definitely since I've been on the board. I'm guessing it was long before that as well. And so, between September of last year or August of last year and January of this year, I don't even think January is a date that we should be talking about. I would say March, because that's when COVID happened. So between August of last year and March of this year, there was no work on the code of conduct. And then when we started to do the work, as things started to calm down around COVID, we forgot to include the parent's voice in this, right? Yet equity is the foundation by which we build everything else on top of. And so I think about my son, who was that kid, right? He was very active, in and out of his chair, doing things that little hyperactive boys do in school, and got suspended. It happened, right? Well, unfortunately, he went on to get wrapped up in the wrong crowd, doing the wrong things. Some of that was probably likely due to the fact that he wasn't in school, right? He didn't have that sort of protective nature that schools provide. And would he be alive today if not for that? And so as we talk about this stuff, right, and it being a priority and us having a sense of urgency around it, I get less convinced that that's the case when the meter doesn't seem to be moving, right? Dr. Jones said it perfectly: equity impacts academic achievement. It's as plain as it can get. And to think that we might go through this another year and be having this conversation again, I don't even have the words, right? To describe how disappointing it is that we're having this conversation. Because some of this could have been dealt with. Look, I get that you're going and you're getting additional training and you're learning from experts in the field and you're building out your equity office and all of the programmatic pieces that come along with that. But some of this stuff did not have to take all of that, right? The suspension stuff, to me, it's not brand new. We know that it's an issue. And yet, not only did we not deal with it for another year, but then we didn't even include the parents in the conversation. So, not really a question, but guys, I feel like this has to be like the number one priority for the district. You don't get to true academic achievement across all kids if you don't go deal with this.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Ms. Cortez?
I would probably, I can't say anything more direct on the topic than my two colleagues just have. I guess my question to Dr. Bedell and his team is this a 0 to 100 situation? Are there steps that can be taken now to, work with the discipline team, to work with the administrators, to address the areas we know have impact while we're reworking this code, and so that we can address the things that Mr. Hogan and Dr. Jones have identified. We have kids right now who this is going to severely impact if we don't think about that lens today, as opposed to it being implemented into the future. And I understand that the implementation piece is not easy, particularly when people are virtual and distant. But are there steps that we can take? And I'm way outside my zone, but I would just encourage you to really push around what can we do now to continue to go deeper, to address those disparate impacts and think about every kid that we could positively impact today instead of negatively. So that would be my challenge.
That's fine, and that's something that we'll work on as a team. I do want to respond because I think some of the comments you made, Mr. Hogan, I think some of it was harsh, and I think it was unfair. It almost insinuate that we haven't done anything towards addressing the inequities in this school district. And I think we have a body of work that speaks to a tremendous amount of what we've done to address inequities, whether it's through our tiered model, whether it's closing gaps with our African-American kids performing against other peers across the state of Missouri. I will say, and I will own this, that we 100% with this student code of conduct need to do a better job of addressing some of the language in there. And I have no problem with that. But I think the way you just presented that almost makes it seem as if, we've been talking equity, but nothing's been done. There's been a lot done to address equity in here. That's the reason why I started the equity office. That's the reason why we made those investments to send those people to training so that we can begin to build a framework to do it. That's the reason why I asked the board a couple of years ago to adopt an equity policy. That's the reason why I asked this board, when will we begin to break down and start unpacking existing policies that will adhere and align to equity policy 0.0. So yeah, I do talk a lot about equity, and there's a lot of evidence of what we've done to address it. Have we figured it all out? No, we haven't. I will own all of that, but I just think, that it's kind of harsh to hear that the way that it came out, that it almost appears as if, we've just been a lot of lip service, and that's how I'm receiving that.
Well, so let me apologize. That's not the intent. I certainly didn't use words that said that you guys haven't done anything in the equity space. Those were not my words at all. My words were very specific to the code of conduct work that's happened in the last year. I go out here and talk about the equity work that you guys are doing. I'm a champion of it. You can ask 100% of the people that I know. You can look on every social media post that I've ever put out there. I've never sent a message that you guys aren't doing anything around equity. My point was directed at the code of conduct work over the last year. And frankly, it feels like excuses were made for why we haven't done anything with the code of conduct in the last year, right? We had between August of last year and March of this year. What can you point to anything that was changed in the code of conduct from around the equity pieces? And you can?
Yeah, and I think there's been work. We can talk, and I think what we'll do is we can put a presentation together around what's been addressed in that student code of conduct. Has it gone far enough to get to where we need to be? Absolutely not. But we have had conversations around, and even with some of the examples that we've heard about people being suspended for punitive reasons. So I think we can definitely present that and share with you, here's some of the adjustments and changes we've made to it. The parental input piece, I own that. That, that's something that absolutely should not happen. I also own the fact that, you know, we generally wait and we start in the second semester to start to build it. That process can be extended to be a lot longer. So, you know, like I said, I'm not the type of superintendent that dodge accountability. I take my criticism well. I own this. I think you are right on what you've said. I just think the way it came out around, it just appeared like, you know, it's a bunch of lip service, and we've done a lot more in this district around equity. And so that's how I took it, Mr. Hogan. And I hear you.
Yeah, well, again, apologies. That was not my intent. Let the record show that I feel like you guys have done a bunch of work in this space. So that was not the intent.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yeah, I'm not going to try to add more than what my colleagues have already said. I will kind of maybe try to intersect a couple of things. I was one of the parents as a co-chair of DAC for 2 years. I participated in this process. So I do know that that is, and Mr. Washington was there with, I was with him. So I know parents are a part of this process. I don't know, I think maybe, you know, this was an unusual year, but typically it is a process that takes place beginning in, I want to say February, March, and then it goes a couple of months with everyone meeting and having input. That's where most of the changes would take place. And then, you know, it gets presented to the board before the fall. As I was thinking about this and some of the input from my colleagues, you know, that process itself, and he has already said this, can be completely overhauled. And I like that I heard him saying, even challenging himself on maybe who is represented there from a parent's perspective, because I think the wider berth there, the better, of having age differences, gender differences, backgrounds, language, the more, the better. So I would also, I think I heard you say, not make this a spring to summer, but an all year cyclical process where we're constantly examining the code of conduct as it relates to our policies, not just the equity policy, but all policies. And I think what happened this time is that's where all of this, the equity policy, which when Ms. Manser and I were on the board, that was passed under the old board. As I was discussing this with her earlier today, you know, that's when this work really probably should have begun, but, you know, it is, for whatever reason, just now coming to an intersection. And I wholeheartedly agree that cohorts cannot wait anymore. And so, but I do have faith that the superintendent and the folks working on this will take what we've said, both with the process, but also with the, can we come and get some of this work done sooner? And so I just think what's happened is this kind of perfect storm of intersection of us also holding ourselves and the administration accountable at the same time. So I will say that I'm in support of going ahead with the code of conduct as is, but I would like to see a plan from the administration outlining exactly how the process will change and the timing.
And Ms. Wolfsey, and I think I'm coming back just to confirm my understanding with Dr. Bedell. I believe, Dr. Bedell, based on an earlier conversation you had with the board, that one of the things that you've committed to do is that you're going to bring back to the board, you know, at the end of next month, a timetable, a detailed timetable for what that process will look like and the milestone points, correct?
And we can, and we'll probably be able to expedite that. I'm working on, we're scheduling a meeting to meet with the team. I talked to Dr. Woodley earlier today, so we'll meet at the end of this week. We'll probably be able to expedite that. I just, just want to be able to talk through the team on this.
And we understand that. And I think that the thing is just for us to understand a general time frame by which we could expect that back. And then I like my colleague, Ms. Wolfsey, I don't want to add on to additional. I think there are a couple things that I want to offer. One is the board is ready and eager to work with the administration on addressing equitable practices. We are here and ready. To some degree, we might even be feeling some frustration possibly with ourselves, or let me just speak for myself, because we're eager to go, but we're feeling like we're supposed to be going down the road together with you. And so we're depending on administration to help us get started on that track together. So we're not, doing something out of, context with what you all are trying to do. So I know that we have some training that we're going to be doing with Dr. Daryl Davis in the next week, but we are ready. So I think you can hear that in this discussion. We're ready to go. We're committed. We believe in that equity policy. We have a deep sense of the feelings of family and community that is looking to us to deliver something meaningful out of that policy. And we know you want that too, Dr. Bedell and Dr. Woodley and the remainder of your team, Mr. Washington, et cetera, Daryl Davis. So you have to hear from this, I hope, that we're ready and we're feeling that challenge. I think, without being repetitive, I think some of the things I see when I look at the code of conduct is I'm still not, this is for future, not for now. I'm still don't have clarity about how and when and the ways in which parents can be best advocates for their children in this process. How will they understand that and what they can do themselves? A lot of times parents feel out of their element when their child is acting up and they're being told by by their building leaders, and they don't actually know what to do, and they might not know how to ask for help. I know that you've added lots of additional supports in our schools, Dr. Bedell, through additional resources and grants we've been able to procure. So we've really expanded our capacity. So I think the question for me is, are we maximizing that capacity? And I, again, don't need an answer now. I mean, we've added additional social workers. We've got a substantial DOJ grant that brought in a lot of money to us. We've built out an Office of Equity. So I think what this board is hungering for is to see how that expanded capacity is really being actualized within the schools. And at the most granular level, this sort of pain, I think a lot of people feel about continuing to see very young children collect a series of tick marks against them in their progress. And do we as adults and leaders understand what that might feel like for the children, and then for even their mothers and fathers and family members, so and how that affects the feelings about school. So I don't know that I have a question, but those are the things that I think you're grappling with here as you listen to our questions and comments. So are there any other comments or discussions as we have this item before us at this time? And I know that we have an item before us, and I know that there's maybe an additional request that a board member wants to bring forward related to this. So it's, I believe that the order of operation would be first to act on the item that is before us, which is the code of conduct. So is there any additional discussion, debate that anyone wants to have regarding the code of conduct? All right. So with that, it would be in order to receive a motion to approve the code of conduct. I can't hear anything.
Sorry. So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Okay, hearing no debate, this will be a roll call vote. The secretary will call the roll.
Mr. Abarca?
No.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
No.
Dr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you. There are 4 yes, 3 no.
All right, so the motion passes. Dr. Bedell, before we move to the next item, because this pertains to discussion we just had, I want to, I think Dr. Jones would like to bring forward a secondary component to the discussion that we just had on the code of conduct.
Absolutely. Thank you. So in light of the discussion that we just had, and without being repetitive, I would like to ask my colleagues to join me in directing that the administration would conduct a review and a timeline for addressing a policy that will restrict the suspension of children in grades pre-K through 3rd grade for anything except for harm to others or themselves.
So are there any questions about the proposal that Dr. Jones has put before us?
So this isn't like a formal motion, right? Or is it?
Not yet.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to see that extended to pre-K through 6, honestly. Would you be open to that, Dr. Jones?
Yeah. Other than bodily harm to themselves or others, yeah.
Ms. Cortez, did you have a question or comment? Okay, sorry. Are there Mr. Barca?
Yeah, I would be curious to hear from the administration on this prior to us taking a vote or discussion. I mean, obviously, I think this is something that I would be in favor of. I'm curious to hear Dr. Bedell or team what their initial thoughts are of this.
For me, it's a matter of if the board decides that the board wants to move forward with putting a policy in place around no suspensions for punitive reasons or level 1 or 2 infractions, because generally when you hit 3, I think that's more around fighting and things of that nature. The administration will do what we need to do to move on that. I think there's going to, there's a lot of discussions and engagement that needs to take place if we're going to move forward with this. There may be some additional financial implications because we need to make sure that we have resources to address some of the concerns that may arise with some of our students that need additional supports that we may not have the bandwidth for. But I absolutely have no problem with this discussion moving forward. There's a number of systems around the country, in my opinion, that aren't doing suspensions. Most of them generally start off and they focus on K through 3 because we know that those are the essential years that students need to be in, and those are the critical years with students being able to learn to read before they read to learn. But I think, listen, I think it's a notable discussion that we need to have.
Dr. Jones, can I ask for myself, because I know this is not written out in a way that I can look at it, so I'm gonna need some clarification, and you'll probably end up having to restate, because I know you didn't present it in the form of a motion. For my own understanding, are you asking the administration to bring back to the board a review or report or review of how they would undertake a elimination of the level 1 and 2 suspensions for level 1 and 2 infractions. Is that, so you're asking them to look at that issue and bring back a report and their perspective on what that execution would look like and the kinds of services that would be needed?
Absolutely. And what are the implications of that, and how, and what kind of, then we can talk about a potential timeline, so that we can have a discussion on that and eventually a vote on that. A couple clarifications. I think we could debate the merits of the suspension, which age groups we're talking about. I definitely would like to prioritize the pre-K through 3. And I keep saying pre-K because currently in the code of conduct, preschoolers can be dismissed. And we know nationally 3 and 4-year-olds are regularly suspended. So I want to make sure that we continue to say pre-K through 3rd at least. And the other point is that I know some of the language has been level 1 or level 2, but upon my study of the code of conduct, I saw that if you have enough level 1s, you can be classified as a level 3. And so as I noted in the document, if